Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hello. Oh, I see a lot of people today. Thank you so much for joining. So, with our incredible panel today, we have a lot of innovation to talk about. And these guys are working in really interesting projects on how we can leverage Web3 for really good deeds. So please welcome with me first Andrew from ValuesCo, co-founder. We have Steven for the Ethereum climate platform and co-founder as well, if I'm not mistaken. And then Joel Kaiser. So your position is Chief Innovation Officer, if I am right.
That's
from
correct. Yes.
AIDONIC. So thank you for joining me today for this interesting panel. I have a first question for all of you here. So you, three of you, are working in the middle or in really great intersection between Web3 and social good. So my question is, you all have a different project working on different things. And can you briefly describe your project, what you are working on, and your primary mission related to Web3? So maybe Andrew, you can start.
Yeah, thank you. So at ValuesCo, what we're building is a way for brands, media publishers, and nonprofits to form coalitions and launch collective action campaigns for customers towards impact goals. And so the way we think about what we're doing is really reinventing digital advertising into a participatory experience for the end user. And we use Web3 for gamification and for impact tracking, so we can kind of visualize at scale the impact that's happening through the platform.
Well, thank you. Really interesting. And how about you, Steven?
Great. My name is Steven Haft. I work at Consensus. I think I've just loosened my earpiece. Well, great. My name is Steven Haft. I work at Consensus. Consensus, as you may know, was founded by Joe Lubin, who is also the co-founder of Ethereum. We had a deep involvement in an event that took place in September of 2022 called the Merge, the transition from proof of work to proof of stake. I've been tracking the ESG space at Consensus for now 5.5 years, representing us at the UN. And it seemed to me that the day after, my focus was on the day after the transition. Now that we go from being a brown tech proof of work to a green tech proof of stake, like NEAR,
Yes.
now that we catch up to NEAR in this space, let's say, what are our opportunities as a green tech to move the entire art and science of climate mitigation forward with Ethereum as a central figure? Not something we could do as a brown tech,
Yes.
but we had the opportunity to pull together a broad consortium, including NEAR, including Cello and Aave and Filecoin and Polygon and a group of other partners, Microsoft, Gold Standard, which is a World Wildlife Fund creation in the climate space, the UN Climate Agency that administers the Paris Accords. We pulled everybody together in a consortium to figure out how do we look back 7 years at the carbon emissions, the carbon footprint, so-called, of Ethereum, which is somewhere in the area of 30 million metric tons, which for reference is, you know, Azerbaijan, 10 million people in the Baku oil fields. It's pretty ugly. And how do we give back to the planet what we took? And
Yes.
our goal is over the next few years to give back more than Ethereum took from the planet in that proof of work period.
I agree on that, and I have like a specific question for you related to that later, so I'll get back to you really soon. But what about you, Joel? What are you working on?
Yeah, I work for a startup in Switzerland. We're building Web3 solutions for the some 4,000 nonprofits involved in delivering assistance all around the world to climate emergencies, forced migration, extreme poverty, etc. The sad reality is that only about 12% of those nonprofits are digitally mature, meaning they use technology effectively. And so we want to level them up and bring also transparency to the entire value chain from donor to recipient. And I'm happy to say today we're just about to launch a big project with a team at the United Nations called Unit Life. They're focused on tackling chronic malnutrition. And with NEAR, we're going to track millions of dollars going to small NGOs around the world to treat malnutrition. And we're going to track it just like a DHL package from the moment it's fundraised to the moment it's delivered, and all of the metadata that will be attached along the way. Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. Well, thank you. I'll get back to you as well, all of you. But I have a question for you, Stephen, first. So you were mentioning the merge, obviously, proof of stake, and of course, the carbon footprint situation we have, I would say. So my question is simple but hard at the same time, let's say. So who is the Ethereum climate platform and the project basically you were working on, building on the progress? So who do we improve, let's say, the carbon footprint of our industry is not as good, so who do we build on this progress? And what is the strategy the Ethereum climate platform is using to further mitigate, I would say, the environmental impact of Web3?
Well, we've put a lot of thought into that. We have, as I say, this pretty esteemed group of companies, mainly EVM companies, that have come together to do this. And talking among ourselves, what we thought we would try to do was to create a sort of best of Web3 platform. And we put our best architects on a platform that, let's say, take a few examples from some of our partners. Filecoin. Well, what is a carbon credit? A carbon credit is a digital asset that stores data. Well, Filecoin is the data storage, the best data storage solution we have in our industry. To Joel's point, we are looking to engage communities in environmental responsibility in, let's say, the global south. We're going to be working quite a lot in the southern hemisphere, Latin America and Africa. And in engaging communities, well, not everybody in the community has a MetaMask wallet, but everybody has a cell phone.
Yes.
Cello, which is built on mobile phones, is by far the best solution we could possibly bring to those communities to create the feedback loop in terms of environmental management. We're putting together a fund that'll have a fairly substantial treasury. Well, treasury management is an area in which Aave excels. So as you look across that group of partners, you will see probably all of us in the room, had we been the architects, would probably have come up with, in a way, the same use cases for our partners across the spectrum of the Ethereum climate platform, and that's what we've done. We've built what I believe is a best of Web3 platform to go after the mitigation of in excess of the 30 million metric tons that Ethereum is responsible for. We contracted with the University of Cambridge, who do the Bitcoin Energy Index, to do the Ethereum Energy Index.
Yes.
We financed their work in this space. They came back to us with the 30 million metric ton number. We make that our North Star, and our goal is to mitigate, not offset. We're not buying cheap old climate offsets, as some people in the Web3 climate space early on sort of thought was the solution. We are looking to invest our money in projects on a go-forward basis that in the future, because investing in old offsets really accepts the climate as it is today.
Yes.
It says, back in 2018, somebody had a project. Yes, but that's baked into the shitty air we have today and the shitty climate. So our goal is to use our money on future projects, future mitigation efforts, and because all of our funds come from companies who've made their money in innovation, is to try to create market acceptance for very new and perhaps some might consider riskier approaches to climate mitigation that need funding to get market acceptance.
Well, that's a lot of work, but really interesting. But you were mentioning communities, and I think we have something to discuss together, Andrew. So ValuesCo's right focus on collaborative, I would say, approaches, communities, and I have a question for you, which is, how do you leverage the capabilities of Web3 to incentivize sustainable, ethical consumption and positive behaviors?
Yeah. So at ValuesCo, the way we think about systems change, in contrast to a lot of carbon initiatives, which are focused on the supply side of the equation, which is how do we, help companies decarbonize their supply chain, offset their carbon, make their operations more efficient. The way we think about the equation is the demand side, which is how do we fundamentally change the way consumers live, work, travel, connect with each other. And the reality is the world is ruled by habit, and the ability to use Web3 to create these rewards, ecosystems and rewards, activations for a good, kind of have the ability to put out these breadcrumbs to allow people to build momentum in their own lives towards habits in new directions, which is really what we need in the world. And the way our team kind of thinks about this stuff is we're actually, DAOs are a brand new storytelling container that really removes the ceiling off of what a company can inspire its customers towards, moving away from just the kind of loyalty points, which in my opinion, Web3 doesn't make that much sexier than a traditional loyalty point system, but really prompting the story of building parallel societies that make the current society obsolete. And so we leverage Web3 in all sorts of ways around gamification. Obviously, NFTs have the ability to kind of visualize impact that's happening within action campaigns that we're launching back to the user, both the impact the individual user is having within the campaign, but also the collective impact that happens within these campaigns. And just to kind of ground what I'm saying into an actual example, we work with a big surfing company called Starboard. They leverage our platform to launch a rewards activation where their customers cleaned up 770,000 pounds of plastic from the ocean, planted 14,000 mangrove trees. The entire campaign led to 35,000 tons of carbon being offset. And the kind of reward mechanisms are kind of NFTs and some Web3 gamification, but it's also just focusing on what do people actually care about. So not that many people at the moment care that much about NFTs, even in this Web3 bubble. So campaigns are, that campaign specifically was discounts on surfboards, tickets to surfing events, meet and greets with celebrity surfers. So it's really all about meeting people where they're at, giving the right incentives for the right behavior, and slowly over time that will snowball into an entirely new society, and that's what we believe in.
Well, a lot of work for you as well, I guess, but really interesting, thank you. Which is, I have a question for you as well. So I am a noob in humanitarian, I know nothing, and I'll be honest, from this kind of point of view, I would say, hey, why do we need Web3 there? And
Well,
exactly right. So I think that's basically what are the advantage of using decentralization in humanitarian aids, and how does that change the relationship between basically the donors to the intermediaries to the beneficiaries, right?
Yeah, well, the short answer, not surprisingly, is trust. I've been working in humanitarian aid for the better part of 20 years. I went all over the world to Iraq, Afghanistan, Darfur, everywhere, in Haiti. And whenever I was pitching a project to the US government or European Union or my own grandmother, the constant question back to me was always, how do we know that the money is going to reach the people who need it the most?
Yes.
That's the question. It's a valid question, but it's 2023. We have tools to solve for that. And so at AIDONIC, that's one of the huge questions we want to solve with Web3. And there's the flip side of that coin is that we want to reward those nonprofits that are highly effective. And by putting transparency on that value chain, a good example is it's manifestly more expensive, more challenging, more risky to educate a girl in Afghanistan than it is in Kenya. And so the market should reward those risks. Those NGOs and those agencies that are doing good work in that space, they should accrue a better reward than those working, for example, in Kenya. And that will direct capital flows to the global challenges that need it the most.
Right, so...
Aurelie, if I can, I would love to amplify on something that Joel just said, that it comes down to trust, with the world's most unlikely example that I found myself talking about with Michael Casey from CoinDesk at NEAR here yesterday. Yes. The most unlikely and terrific example of Web3 and trust is Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah. In a very interesting way. We all remember the banking crisis that took place with Wells Fargo Bank,
yes,
and
absolutely.
People lost their homes. It affected millions across the world, this banking crisis of which WAMU and Wells Fargo and some of them were the principal architects of these crimes. In early 2023, the head of retail sales at the Wells Fargo Bank went to prison 7 years after this crisis. Now, let's look at Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yes.
Sam Bankman-Fried was convicted exactly 12 months to the day from the CoinDesk story that broke the Sam Bankman-Fried scandal. What does that tell us? It tells us that the trusted distributed ledgering system was so good that by comparison to the smoke and mirrors that the banking industry could put up to protect itself, there was no way out. All the facts were immutable in convicting Fried. So I think in a strange way, we need to hold up the success of 12 months from the day this broke, 8 months from the day he was indicted, he was convicted. That's how trusted this ledgering system can be on a go-forward basis.
That's interesting, actually. This is really
linked. It's an odd turning of things around, but it's true.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think this is something we share in this industry, right? We want to be sure that we use decentralization for trust and, can I say, transparency as well?
Exactly. There will always be bad actors, but it's pretty transparent in Web3.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's actually linked to my questions. You are half answered that already. But I have a last question for all of you before we wrap up this really great panel, which is, so we talked about your own project, right? My question is much more on the macro level. So with all the perspective in mind, with all what we discussed now, how do you all envision Web3 playing a transformative role in reshaping all global priorities? Andrew, I see. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, there's two aspects of it. There's the actual technology itself, which there's been plenty of talks on the stage around BOS and decentralization and all the kind of things that are repeated at every crypto conference. But I think what's more important is really a cultural shift. We at ValuesCo believe in this concept of emergent strategy, which is essentially instead of a centralized entity making a plan and saying we're going to achieve this plan, you create fertile soil for thousands of micro experiments to happen, and the best experiments and outcomes rise to the top. And so where I'm hopeful about Web3, in my very humble opinion, is providing kind of a parallel vision to what some certain centralized planners in the world, like WEF, think that they can just tell us where we're going, and I don't agree with their vision of the future, and I think that there's better possibilities of how we can shape the future in a way that's more grassroots up and more empowering individuals. And I think that Web3 as a conceptual framework beyond the technology kind of provides the hook that can serve as that cultural shift to really change things to where, in my opinion, we need to go.
Yeah, really interesting. Another opinion, maybe? Do you want to go, Joel?
Well, I'm curious, just like in the audience, how many people here are building Web3 solutions specifically for the global south or for least developed countries? Or how about know anyone who's doing that? Okay, it's 3, 4 hands. I mean, to me, this represents a huge opportunity. The median age of Africa is 19 years old. The median age of North America and Europe is 41 and 44, respectively. The birth rate of Africa is 4 times Europe, North America. So our future customers, they're not here. They're in Africa, and I think there's a huge market there. There's a huge opportunity there. Plus, just like Kenya and many other African countries went from no phones, there was no landlines to mobile phones and smart devices. There's no legacy. There's very few legacy systems to compete with in these countries, and so I think there's a huge opportunity there. And I really hope that we're able to direct some attention in that area, because the types of tools that we need to do our job need to work at the last mile. They can't be just for English-speaking people on 5G. They need to have solutions that are going to work in the savannah of Africa and elsewhere in the world. So that's my big hope, and I hope that these kinds of conferences are a place that we can sort of plant those seeds for 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 months from now.
Yeah. And what about you, Stephen?
Those of us in this room, all of us, are here because we've decided to join up with the creation of a trust layer for the planet. Trust, as we all learned as children, has to be earned.
Yes.
I think we have, you go back to 2015. 2015, two things happened. Ethereum was created and the Paris Accords were signed by 195 countries, creating the global address to the climate crisis we find ourselves in. The two had a great deal of commonality. If you read the Paris Agreement, throughout the agreement, uses the word transparent. Throughout the agreement, talks about the end to financial duplicity, as does the creation of Ethereum. The Paris Agreement talks about redistributing power to the periphery from those in the center for decision making. So does the creation of Ethereum. Both talk about a radical transformation of business, industry, and society. The brown nature, unfortunately, of the proof of work scheme was such that the alignment that was created in 2015 was broken. The trust was broken. What we, all of us, and NEAR is a socially engaged, brilliant proof of stake based system, and now Ethereum, who've caught up, have the opportunity to regain that alignment. And that's what we see as our opportunity to both in this community and on behalf of the community.
Yeah, right. So if I had to resume all of your, let's say, all of our discussion today, I think there is one word I've heard from literally everyone here. It's basically trust, right? We work here in Web3 to bring trust and be sure that what we do has really positive impact in society, independently of what we are working on. Humanitarian heads to be sure that the trust is there, where anytime we send funds, for you that would be for all the carbon footprint, being sure that everything is going in the right direction for all the climate challenges we have right now. And for you as well, to be sure we are working with the right communities and be sure that we have a trust around there. And can I resume it that way? Trust and transparency for everyone. Is that how we could?
Yeah, I think that's one component. I mean, one thing I just want to close with is like, impact is this kind of like to the side thing that definitely like with us when we have conversations with like on my fundraising tours or like a lot of stuff just get lumped into, they're just like an impact thing. But really the underlying philosophy of Web3 is really this cultural shift that, like impact and cultural change happens through culture, pop culture, through celebrities, through things that people are actually paying attention to. And so one of my like, I guess calls to action for the room is like, we need more consumer dApps. We need more things that normal people can interact with and connect with each other with and connect with culture through. And a lot of the talks that I see on Web3 stages are just layer 1, layer 2, ZK this, like all these technologies that nobody in the real world cares about at all. And there's not that much conversations on this is the consumer app that I'm building that's going to help to change culture. And so that's something that I think is missing in the conversation around impact, where it's not just about impact, it's culture change.
Yeah, so more use cases for mass adoption, if I can resume that in a sentence. But I think we are wrapping up our panel today. So Andrew, ValuesCo, thank you so much. Stephen, Ethereum Climate Platform, and Joel, with my French accent, from AIDONIC. Thank you so much for being here with me today and sharing your insight. And thank you to a great audience today as well for hearing a lot of really nice use cases.
Amazing audience, best audience.
Yeah.